A new report from People for Education points to gaps in students' access to extracurricular activities. Now, the findings show that while most extracurricular activities and learning opportunities have returned to pre-pandemic levels, students' access varies substantially depending on geography as well as the median family income of the school neighborhood. Well, the survey was compiled with data from more than 1,000 Ontario publicly funded schools. And for more on this, we are joined by Annie Kidder. She is the Executive Director with People for Education. Thanks for joining us. Let's talk about this report. And I can only imagine that many schools that may be underfunded, that are in low-income neighborhoods, might not have as much access to these extracurricular activities. Talk a little bit about the findings and what stood out to you.
Well, I think that is true. And I think, the sort of big picture context, it's understanding these activities are incredibly important to kids' education. They learn vital skills that are going to last them throughout their lives. They're not an extra or kind of frill on the side. And often what happens is that schools fundraise to support them. So parents fundraise or the school does. And in neighborhoods with lower average family incomes, they are less likely to have some of those activities. In some cases, not as likely to have some clubs, not as likely to have some arts programs. And that's true also in rural areas. So for us, it's, realizing these are really an essential part of a quality education, and that right now it's looking as if it's not equitable in terms of which kids have access to them.
Looking at some of the numbers and the results, 80% of schools in high-income areas offered arts clubs, school plays, bands, visual arts, compared to just 66% of schools in low-income areas. And, I can imagine that for a lot of kids that might not have as much interest in school, but it's those extracurricular activities that get them excited about going to school. They're going to see their friends, they're going to compete, and that also might invigorate some of their love for learning and translate into the classroom. What did you notice in regards to that?
Well, and I think that's really true. It's one of the biggest things that we found out in the pandemic was going to school in person was really important. The socialization, the relationships, and all the stuff that happens at school, exactly those arts programs or sports. And kids learn to be persistent, they learn to practice, they learn to collaborate, they learn to solve problems doing those things. And you're totally right, for some kids, that's their reason for going to school. So for us, it's, making sure that we're paying attention to this and going, we've got a problem here. We saw it with fundraising too, and understanding that they're essential and that we need to do something about it.
We got a response from the Education Minister's office in response to the report, and it reads in part that we know that extracurricular activities, sports, and field trips are an essential part of a quality education that builds real life and job skills, and that is why we are investing nearly $27 billion in public education, almost $700 million more than the year prior, supported by the hiring of 2,000 educators. What's your response to the minister?
Well, yes, there has been more money put in some areas this year, but what there isn't right now is any specific provincial funding for things like extracurricular activities and other kinds of learning opportunities. So we've said there needs to be policy and funding developed so that all kids have access to those essential things. And we still are saying to the government, there should be a task force. We should be looking at all of education, not just sort of one-off types of funding that are coming right now.
We've got about 1 minute left, but this is something I found interesting. And we think about extracurricular activities, we think about sports and plays, but 47% of schools in high-income areas offered academic competitions compared to just 16% of schools in the low-income areas. So this is an extracurricular that's all about academics.
Absolutely, and I think a lot are. And to me, there's a kind of a problematic division between, like, this is academic and thus important. So we're worried about a kind of back to basics movement that might exclude some of these vital parts of education because, some of these activities are directly connected to school, but a lot of them teach you skills that you can apply to your academic learning too. So it's an important thing for us to look at in terms of we're a rich province in Ontario. Everybody should have a very high quality education.
Annie Kidder, thanks for stopping by again.
Thank you.
It's good to see you.